Hey guys, it's XFreds. I'm here to give off my thoughts on Sonic Frontiers Update 3. I just finished it last night with my friends Tyler and John. They were there when I was fighting the final boss, and yeah, it was. I ain't gonna lie, that was a lot of fun. Not gonna lie. Now, obviously, the update isn't perfect as there is a lot of diversity within the update as itself, which I'm not gonna lie, it is a little unfortunate because we did have because Sonic Frontiers at a point was a universally loved Sonic game, and here we are, more diversity. I will say I will say I'm definitely on the crowd that enjoys Update 3. I'm willing to acknowledge its flaws, as I will get into, but for the most part, I enjoyed it. Now, starting off with the story, I thought the story was pretty good. The additional content within the story was pretty much what I expected. It's Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles helping Sonic to get the Chaos Emeralds, but then Sonic, instead of going after the Chaos Emeralds himself, he's actually going to be completing some trials throughout the DLC. And oh boy, can they be a challenge. But we'll get into them in a little bit. I feel like the story kind of resembles the characters in a very good way here. Now, obviously, I'm not going to show too much for the sake of spoilers, but all I can say is that the higher highs pretty much makes up for any minor inconvenience that the story may have. In fact, I don't even know if there really was any. I just kind of ignored them while enjoying the good parts. And that's pretty much what good stories kind of do for Sonic. Like, the higher highs just make me forget all of the bad shit that the story has. Kind of like the original story of Frontiers, Unleashed, Black Knight, Secret Rings. The stories for those games are phenomenal. And SA2. I forgot to mention SA2. But yeah, good stuff. It also fixes the underwhelming ending from the original Sonic Frontiers, which again, we'll get into later. Alright, now after going through a quick look at the story, let's get into the main part of the game, the multiple playable characters. Throughout the story of Sonic Frontiers, you'll be switching to Amy, Knuckles, and Tails, and then you'll be switching to Sonic to complete some trials, switching to Amy, Knuckles, and Tails again, and then doing Sonic for the final trial. It's not a balancing in terms of playable characters that I thought would work so well, but I actually thought that everyone got equally as much time to play. Amy, Knuckles, and Tails will feel like that they're got equal amount of time to play. And I appreciate that because some Sonic games kind of like SA2, just kind of a majority of the game is just the treasure hunting and mech shooting, which is not very liked for some reason, and due to poor game design and slow gameplay. All the playable characters are fun in their own rights, however, we will be going after them one at a time. So, let's start with Amy. In my opinion, this is the best that Amy has played ever in a 3D Sonic game. Dare I say the best that she's ever played, period. Yes, even better than the version it's in Sonic Origins. She controls probably the best of the playable characters, as she glides very well with the cards. The double jump, and the double jump slash triple jump is really effective, and it makes platforming a hell of a lot easier, and her moveset is just also pretty good. Her combat was actually not half bad, even though it can be a little difficult to get used to, but overall, it's pretty good stuff for Amy. Not bad. Then we get into Knuckles, and this one is a little hard to explain. But when you glide as Knuckles, Knuckles just kinda controls like a car, kinda. You do get some upgrades. It's updating the glide later on once you get enough skill points, but for the most part, there's just not really an efficient way to get Knuckles to control well. Another issue I kinda had with Knuckles is that he can kinda be lacking in some areas. For some reason, he can only climb on these red-like towers, and I don't like it as much as the Avengers style. Now, I know people are just gonna call me, oh, biased Adventure fan, but it, let me tell you, I do not think the Adventure games are the best games in the series. They're definitely up there. I love the Adventure games, if but I actually think Sonic Frontiers as a whole, along with games like Sonic Unleashed, are actually better than the Adventure games. So yeah, point disproven already. But yeah, for some reason he can only climb on these walls and nothing else, which is pretty odd considering that in the adventure games you were able to climb on a lot of stuff. You couldn't climb onto everything, but you were certainly able to climb on more things than he did in Frontiers. So if they want to do Knuckles again, I suggest making the glide speed less stiff, make him climb on more objects, and also get rid of that delay when he glides. Seriously, it is rough. However, in terms of combat, Knuckles is pretty good. Now, a hot take that might be an actual hot take, I'm not entirely sure, but I actually think Tails is a better character than Knuckles. While it is stupid that you don't get to use a homing attack like Amy and Knuckles could, I do think everything else kind of makes up for it. First off, the flying is actually really good. It actually doesn't control like a car, and it kind of loose, leading to players feeling a bit free. I do have an issue with Tails though, as he does get a little delay when he flies as well. But overall, it is not a big deal, and it's kind of like Knuckles' issue, but not as bad considering that you can move him. And also, his upgrades can be pretty nice as well, as you can. One of the upgrades is the tornado. You can seriously cheat all the platforming, well, most of the platforming at least. It's Tails is very open with his gameplay, and I do feel like he can be a little bit overpowered, or a lot more overpowered than Amy, I'll admit, which is why he is a step down Amy in terms of gameplay, and the fact that he doesn't have a homing attack, as well as the delay in flying. But aside from all of that, Tails is just very solid. Really, all the playable characters have good aspects in them. I just wish that they could be improved on a little bit more. For example, I really like Tails's mech, but I wish that a little less time was spent so that it doesn't become as overpowered. And again, I want them to fix Knuckles. Knuckles just feels so wrong. And I'm sorry, but he just feels so wrong. Amy, on the other hand, I actually think she's as perfect as she can be, and yes, she can be a little bit overpowered when it comes to the jump, but this is the kind of overpowered that I don't mind as much, specifically because I think she has a higher skill ceiling than Knuckles and Tails, which is why I prefer her. And speaking of high skill ceiling, this game is a lot more difficult than the original Frontiers, as it has harder mini bosses, harder platforming. It has a lot of challenging stuff, but in my personal opinion, I don't really find the game unfair like most people do. I'm not gonna say skill issue or anything because to be quite frank, it is a little bit rude, and it does come off as criticizing someone from not being as good as good at the game as you are. It does kind of go off as being a smidge bit rude, but that is just me. I'm not too huge on the puzzles as they are pretty slow paced, but at the same time, they're not required to to progress. Most of them, anyway. However, I will point out one thing that was pretty cheap in terms of difficulty, and that was the hard mode version of the boss rush. Oh my god, this mode is so annoying. You You cannot beat this thing on your first try. I'm serious. If you think you can first try this trial, well, sorry, but you ain't doing that. As there has been a perfect parry move added to Sonic's moveset, making these bosses ever the more frustrating. It is manageable. It's far from impossible, but it is very annoying, and it just comes off as trying to beat these guys just really, really annoying in hard mode. So throughout this part of the game, I had to switch it to easy mode and part of the final boss in order to get through the DLC. I did struggle with the DLC quite a bit when it came to the ending parts. It is what you expect, but still, I don't like the fact that the boss rushes require you to make perfect timing parries. It just seems kind of cheap to me, but who knows? That is just me. Speaking about the trials, though, I actually like climbing up most of the towers. It requires some difficult platforming, which is pretty hard, but it's not so hard to the point that it doesn't make me want to rage quit. Especially the fifth tower. The fifth tower was actually really fun. It actually required some high level precision from the player, and it was actually really fun. Although I will admit the parry move can make climbing the tower a little broken, though, as it prevents Sonic from falling. I didn't use it because I just felt like it was kind of cheap, but I still had a lot of fun climbing these towers, despite the fact that it makes you restart the towers as every time you fall. I do think that is a little frustrating and a little harsh, but aside from that, I really enjoyed these towers. In terms of the trials, though, okay, this is probably the most inconsistent part about this update. When it comes to Trial 1, 3, and 4, they're not that bad in the slightest. Sure, Trial 1 can be a little bit challenging on your when you first do it, but aside from that, challenges 3 and 4, and this is number 4 that you're seeing right now, aren't even that hard. However, a lot of controversy was heading into the second trial, and I can't blame them. Now, I didn't have too much issue with the second trial. I mean, I was able to quick side loop it and then attack it. It just requires a little bit of quick timing. But I can understand why a lot of people was frustrated from this trial, and to be honest, I was frustrated as well when I first played it. However, now that I played through this trial and just did the quick reactions like I normally do, Trial 2 isn't too bad, but it can be annoying, especially considering that this is the second trial of the game, as 3 and 4 were significantly easier than this. As for Trial 5, again, that one is probably the worst trial, as I had to force myself to go into easy mode in order to get through it faster. It's, again, not a huge fan of this trial. I think it's the worst trial in the game, and probably the worst part of Frontiers, to be completely honest. While it is definitely manageable, I still do not like playing this at all. Now, before we go into the final boss, I actually have another thing that I want to talk about, and that's the new cyberspace levels. I think these are some of the best cyberspace levels in the entire game. For starters, the level design is completely original, and a lot more open than the rest of the game. So I really do enjoy playing through these trials, even though I can get a little bit lost. These challenges from cyberspace is really made me appreciate cyberspace a lot more than I already did, even though the controls are still a little bit jank, which I had to use mods in order to fix. But all in all, this is still a big improvement over cyberspace, and even though it's far from perfect, you can tell that they're experimenting. They're experimenting. Really, they are. Alright, enough stalling. Let's talk about the true final boss to Sonic Frontiers. The revamped The End. This is where Cyber Supersonic comes into play, and this is where Sonic Frontiers is at its peak. In order to win this battle, you gotta quickly switch to the purple hose and hit it a few times in order to knock it off. After that, you just gotta use Supersonic 2 to quickly do as much damage as possible to this punk. Once you do enough damage to him, you gotta go on the cannon and you gotta side loop it in order to get it off. And once you do that, you gotta pull a sword. You gotta pull a sword with a side loop. Go around it with Cyber Supersonic to get the sword. Eggman gets the sword, and then Supreme is not willing to give up. He starts firing at Eggman and trying to kill him, but then Sage protects him. She didn't want him to die, but unfortunately, Sage's protection was not enough. So that is when Sonic's friends come to help Sage defend Eggman, and that's where the fight continues. Now here you just gotta repeat the process of removing the hose and then just doing damage to him. After that you get into a final QTE segment. Sonic kicks Supreme all the way up to the end, using all of his strength to push him up to space. But it seems that's not enough. Eggman tells Sonic that it's now or never, and then he has to get into the Supreme Cannon in order to shoot Supreme all the way to the end, ending the end for good. That's pretty much it for Sonic Frontiers Update 3, everybody. So, what do you guys think? Now, my opinion, I think it's great. It was definitely worth the wait, and I'm glad it was added. Now, it's not perfect. I wish Knuckles and Tails were cooped up a bit, but they're still fine for all things considered.
Get to go home with you.
And there's just a lot of ambition and emotion put into this update. There's a lot of effort put into here, despite a couple of cut corners. For the most part, though, I'd say Frontiers Update 3 was worth playing. And this was free content nonetheless, and we got that hell of a final boss. A final boss that remains now as my favorite final boss of the Sonic series, replacing the final half. I don't usually review updates for video games, but this was one that I had to get off my chest. After all, I am a big Sonic fan. So, with that being said, guys, thank you guys so much for watching.